if you can have a very clear, here's how many sales I got for the number of clicks before I made the change, and here's how many sales I got per click after I made the change, you can actually.
Welcome, everyone. Brett here with Crave Books, and today I am speaking with the one and only Bryan Cohen. He is the CEO at Best Page Forward. That's bestpageforward.net, where he runs an author ad school and offers numerous author coaching services. And he also has a 5-day author ads profit challenge, which you can join, and has helped thousands of authors level up their ads and actually be profitable, which is the whole point of Amazon ads. And he is in high demand because I feel like I see you on every author self-publishing YouTube channel. So you obviously know what you are doing and have mastered your craft. And I met Bryan briefly at 20 Books Vegas this last year. And I don't know if I remember correctly, did you say you weren't speaking at last year's event?
Yeah, I'm not speaking at this coming year. I spoke at this past year.
Okay.
Um, I can say I spoke at every 20 Books Vegas, but then it ended, and I'm excited for everyone who goes to the new incarnation. But I already had decided taking a year off, chill with the
Done.
wife and kid.
Relax. Yeah, I'm sure. And
Exactly,
I'm sure
exactly.
you're probably pretty busy. Like I said, you're everywhere on YouTube. So, but could you give everyone a little bit of background with regards to the publishing space and how you got into publishing? And
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I went from blogging to books when I realized, hey, it was easier to actually sell something to someone than to just hope that they stumble upon my website, and was having a lot of success with writing books for writers, and they were writing prompts books, and some were for kids. And man, all the authors I connected with just in the early days of self-publishing, the early, we're talking 2010 to 2013, it was always really great. And I love creative people. And so I started connecting up with a lot of authors, ended up connecting with Jim Kukral, who used to run the Author Marketing Club, and ended up saying he wanted to do a podcast. And that got me into the Sell More Books show, which is now run for 10 years, which is crazy. But that I feel like it always just kind of makes sense where I slide into in the publishing world. I used to freelance, so it made sense to do blurbs. People didn't understand if their blurbs were helping their sales get better or not, so it made sense to do ads because that was helping to get some actual data behind whether or not something was selling. And I've moved a lot more into coaching and mindset and other stuff as the author world continues to shift. And so I'm very fortunate to just have been able to help a lot of authors in a variety of ways, whether they're starting out or whether they are longtime veterans of the field.
yeah, it seems like everything kind of, once you get into one thing, then that leads to the next thing, because there's always things where you have to reach outside of your sphere of whatever you're doing to get those little tidbits. And then you're like, oh, well, I guess I could kind of learn how to do the rest of this over here in Amazon ads. And then
Right.
you learn that, and then that spills over into something else. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, which is a good thing. You're constantly learning and growing and doing new things.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so you started off with blurbs, and then you went into Amazon ads.
Yeah.
Now, that was specifically to kind of get data and help people with their blurbs.
Yeah. I think one of the things that people struggle with is they make a change. New blurb, new cover, new uh new subtitle, whatever it is. And they make these changes and then they say, well, sales went down or sales went up, so that must be it. But April isn't necessarily going to sell the same as March, or May the same as April. And so how do you actually tell what those changes have wrought in your sales? And the way you actually tell is with data. Obviously, you don't get to see the people who visit your Amazon page unless you send them there directly with the ads. And so Amazon ads, Facebook ads, it doesn't matter what kind of ad you do. I'm partial to the Amazon ads, but if you can have a very clear, here's how many sales I got for the number of clicks before I made the change, and here's how many sales I got per click after I made the change, you can actually see, oh, before it took 10 clicks to get a sale, and after it took 8, so I must be heading in the right direction. So really, it is just kind of the data you need in order to figure out, did that change lead to a positive thing?
Yeah. Are you more of a creative driven person, or do you also like the data? Because I feel like this is one thing that authors, especially self-published authors, struggle with, is because they're creatives and they don't necessarily want to look at the data and create a spreadsheet and do all that stuff. Are you kind of in both spheres, or do you like one more than the other?
I'm kind of in both spheres. I'm very much I need people to understand the data in order to like get this whole thing. And so I kind of use creative ways to educate people on the data, which so it really ends up being kind of a mix, because if you just tell them, a bunch of numbers, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to say, no thanks, can I go do something else now?
Like, what would be an example of one of these ways that you're able to get the message across to authors?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is sharing anecdotes, sharing stories, sharing how it worked with one person or the other. We had one author who she had spent an entire year writing a new series. And when she launched it, nothing happened. She barely got any sales and she had no idea why. But she found out about the ads, and through our challenge and then through our ad school program, she started running the ads, and one of our instructions after the challenge is run ads to each of your series, usually the series starters, but run ads to the different book ones you have. And she did that, and she found the new series, still nothing. Very low conversion, didn't work really well. There weren't a lot of sales for the clicks. But one of her older series was very profitable. And so she kind of rode the wave. She ran more ads to the old series that was profitable. And then she went back to the drawing board, figured out, okay, is it the bad cover? Is it a bad blurb? Is it something in the sample size of the beginning of that book that needs a tweak? She went back, fixed that, and then she had both of them profitable. And so it's really helpful to teach authors in terms of, well, this happened to this author, and it's essentially a case study, but authors don't know what that means. And so it's like you just kind of share the stories of what different results people have had, and then they start to understand it. Another creative way, I wrote an entire book on Amazon ads that is half fiction and half nonfiction. And
Really?
it's called Self-Publishing with Amazon Ads. And in the fiction portion, it's this kind of amalgamation of different people I worked with. A coaching student, an author, wins a year of coaching with me, and I walk her through the trials and tribulations over the course of a year of getting her ads profitable. And some people have really loved that framework because they didn't understand it just from reading the nonfiction, but when they see an actual author like them going through the same things, feeling emotions, that's something I think a lot of people forget to say, is there's a lot of emotions that come with spending money on anything, but particularly ads. And I think people have really gotten a deeper understanding from that kind of creative way of explaining it.
Yeah, a lot of those books can be so cut and dry. And
I know.
I mean, some people like it, but I think a lot of people, it's nice to have it when you can resonate with the reader a little bit more when it's a technical subject like Amazon ads, for sure.
Right.
So before we get into talking about different keywords and stuff like that, who should or should not be running Amazon ads? Is there someone that you say, hey, you should probably be running Amazon ads? Or is there someone that's like, hey, right now is not a good time to run Amazon ads?
Back in the day, I used to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't run them unless you have a series going. So you have the opportunity for people to read through to book 2 to book 3. But now I've changed my tune because I think any author should run Amazon ads. Because every author in their head has this 10-year plan of what they think needs to happen with their books. And ads can actually tell you if your plan holds water. If you run ads to the first book in a planned 10 book series and it doesn't really go anywhere, the conversion's bad, you can't really get it selling, then that isn't necessarily like, yep, kill that series, don't ever do it again. But it is a clue. It is a clue. And whenever I bring this stuff up, people are like, sacrilege. What about all those readers who say you can't, I'm not going to start until there's at least 3 books out. If you can't sell book 1, because there's enough readers out there that will read a book 1. If you can't sell book 1 with the ads, you get 100 clicks, you maybe change a cover, change a thing, you get another 100 clicks, and it still won't sell. Don't write 9 more books in that series. And so I think the ads are very, very important for authors to see the data and not just go on, well, this author, they didn't succeed in their first book, but then their second book made $1 million. And it's like, yeah, but that's a unicorn. That's a diamond. We aren't necessarily going to get those results with each one. So I think everyone should run Amazon ads because it's going to teach them where their books stand right at that moment.
Yeah. And I think it goes kind of towards like, is there the desire to read that book in that topic? Because if you write a book on a topic that nobody wants to read, you're not really going to be able to create that desire in that audience to read on that topic. So you really need to be able to understand what they want to read before you continue. So moving on, before I hit the start button, what are the essentials that I need to have down pat on, let's say, my book listing, my Amazon book page? What do I need to have done before I hit start on my Amazon ads?
I'm a big fan of start and then pivot later.
Really?
Because authors don't necessarily, if you tell them, oh, you need a better cover, you need a better blurb, you need to tweak your keywords, your 7KDP keyword phrases, then they're going to get stuck in analysis paralysis and never actually start the ad. So I'm very much a start it on day 1, pivot later. But how do we get the ads optimized? A lot of it's going to come down to your book's metadata, your 3 keywords and your 7KDP keyword phrases. So they don't need to be optimized right away, but you do need to look into optimizing them. One of the best ways to optimize them is to think about what books are like my book. And if you search a keyword that you're thinking of using as a 7KDP keyword phrase, and books that are totally different than yours show up in that search, it is not a keyword phrase that should be used as one of your 7. Same with the category. If you go to a category and there's no books like yours in the top 100, it might not be a category for you, because relevancy is one of the most important things. There are 2 ways to compete on getting your ad shown on Amazon: spending a crap ton of money or relevancy. And if you would rather keep your budget lower for these, especially when you're experimenting, then you're going to want to compete on relevancy, which means you want to get that metadata in line. If you haven't published the book yet, make sure your title fits within that genre. No inside jokes on your title. You need to review and understand your bestseller list there. I just read something. People will say like, well, you don't have to research the bestseller list. You should just write your heart. I just read Nicholas Sparks, like super successful romance author. he deeply researched the bestseller list for 3 years before he found his success. And it's like, well, that might just be one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, I didn't watch. There's a podcast. I haven't watched it, but basically the title was "Cracking the Code to Best-Selling Romance,"
Mm,
which I'm sure implied doing a little bit of research before writing and publishing your book.
yeah.
Um, so now let's dive into the Amazon ads.
Okay.
Automatic versus manual. If I'm starting out, should I run just auto ads and let it find the keywords for me based on my 7 keywords that I put in, or should I start with manual and make a list, or what do you recommend?
We definitely recommend you run at least one auto ad, but we do recommend manual ones too. We're big fans of getting at least a few category ads going. Once again, relevant category ads, and then keyword ads. We will recommend you do a little brainstorming. Think about the kind of words people would search when they search for your book, but you could also put in book titles that are similar to yours, like they show up in your also bots, or you just know your genre inside and out, so you know which titles would make sense for yours. And we actually recommend you keep making the manual ads, keep brainstorming and researching more keywords, and come up with more and more keyword ads to post each week. We have found that Amazon tends to reward the authors who are consistently adding more ads. There is a point of you should probably stop once you've gotten about 100 campaigns for a book, or you might stop way sooner than that. But they do tend to like it when you don't treat it like a set it and forget it platform.
And how many authors have come to you saying my ads aren't working after 10 clicks? Like how many clicks
Every author.
should authors wait until they can say, okay, maybe I need to look at these differently?
Usually 100 clicks for a book. So we'll say, hey, put all the ads that are for one book into a portfolio, which is like a folder for your ads. Then you look at that portfolio and you see my portfolio has 100 clicks. Great. Let's go over to the KDP dashboard and see, did we get some sales during that 100 clicks? We're not big believers in the tracked sales stats over on the ad dashboard. We've seen way too many authors who've had very successful ads not utilize those tracked stats. So we always look over at KDP to see where those royalties are at. And if your royalties are higher than your spend, then we definitely recommend continuing. If it's the opposite, then we recommend looking at your book sales page and seeing, okay, you found out of those 100 clicks, you didn't get very many sales. What could you do differently? What could you learn from this?
Now, when you say track stats, you're referring to like the ACOS and all those on your
Oh
main
yeah,
dashboard?
we're not huge fans of those stats, and I know it's like there's a lot of software out there that really relies on automation related to the ACOS. I've seen too many authors with 400% ACOS who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to say, well, we better look at that ACOS because
Now,
it can be
ACOS doesn't
helpful. But
take into account the royalties, right? It just accounts for the overall price of the book.
so ACOS will factor in, it will say your spend divided by the total unit sales that have been tracked. And so you want the lowest percentage possible. You want it like you spend $1 and you made 1,000. Like that's the percent that you want based on the ACOS. But there's one thing that inflates the ACOS and a lot of things that deflate the ACOS. So it's the list price. So if you have a paperback that you sell at $14.99, but you actually only make $2 a pop, it's going to say your ACOS is based off that $14.99. So that inflates the ACOS. But what about people who borrow your book? That doesn't show up on ACOS. that doesn't, after 14 days, it won't even show up on your estimated KU pages read. If someone borrows the book, reads it on day 15, your ads get no credit for it. If someone sees your ad, searches for your book based on the ad, buys your book off of the ad, that won't show as having come from the ad. There's a lot more people that do that than you'd think. They're like, I feel bad clicking on an ad. It's weird how many people I've heard do that. And lastly, some fall through the cracks. I think it's easier when they're tracking like a washing machine that someone's running ads to. Oh, the washing machine is this big transaction and we're shipping it. There's a big paper trail for it. Someone sees an ad on their phone, is off Wi-Fi, clicks, buys. Sometimes it just doesn't get tracked, we find. And so there's all these reasons that kind of make it so that if you're selling ebooks, ACOS is really difficult to look at as something that can be helpful. Paperbacks, if you're mostly selling paperbacks, it certainly can be more helpful, but even then it is not perfect.
The first book I published, that first 2 months, I used a service, I'm not going to name names, to run my Amazon ads. And they said, oh, check out this great ACOS. And then I was like, wait a second, I've spent $200 and my royalties are only $50. This doesn't make sense.
Yep. And it's the weird thing with ACOS. We could have an ACOS that's 400%, but the royalties are $500 instead of the $200. I've had campaigns. This was before they were tracking KU pages. I had campaigns for a multi-author anthology, so lots and lots of KU pages in that, over 1,000 KU pages. It was only priced at 99 cents though, and so according to the ad, you spent you spent $7,000 and you made $737. I go and look at my ACOS was like 900 something percent.
Yeah.
I go over to my royalties, it's 21,000. And so that is a very blatant example of ACOS not always telling the truth. Most examples, wouldn't be quite as egregious there, but it is one of the reasons why ACOS is not one of the first things we look at.
Mm-hmm. What would be one of the first things you prefer to look at?
Spend on the ad dashboard versus royalties on the KDP dashboard.
Seems pretty common sense to do that.
You'd think. I've had a lot of people call me heretical for that, but it really does make a lot of sense. And I think, folks like you who've been out in the businessy world and such too, it's like Facebook ads don't always track, so you really still have to look at the bottom line. It's always about the bottom line.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best advice I've heard on Amazon ads is to look at the royalties. Now going back to keywords.
Yeah.
When I'm creating a keyword list, should I go wider on the keyword list, or should I kind of focus them on a certain few of keywords, or what's too few?
Well, I've heard of ads working with 10 keywords. I've heard of ads working with 1,000 keywords. But as far as what's doable for people, I think about 100 keywords in an ad, which is usually how many you'll find in an also viewed or an also bought carousel. If you use something like Kindle Trends Also Bots Downloader or one of these kind of programs that'll scrape that for you. Usually that is kind of the magic number we found, 100 to 150 keywords in an ad. You can't go too narrow at first because you don't necessarily know what's going to work. We've in the past referred to this as first generation ads. We don't really know how these keywords will go. Second generation ad, we might kind of clamp down a little bit more. Third generation ad, when we have a lot of data, that's when we might only have something like 10 keywords in an ad.
And like for most authors, would you say that having a bit of a wider search for your keywords in your Amazon ads is usually better Is the 10 keywords like you mentioned, is that kind of an outlier?
Yeah, I mean, that would be an outlier, but usually that is a person who has so much data on hundreds and hundreds of keywords already that they already know what is going to work there. Um, so I would say going wider with it. We usually do broad match for those keywords in the beginning because we don't know. There might be other combinations of those words that would work really well that we just hadn't thought of. And it might help us come up with titles that we hadn't thought of that are related to our book. And then we can throw that into a later ad that we are using more data as the basis for it. Because in the beginning, we just don't know. We're guessing. I remember some of my early ads for my fiction, I would say, I bet this book by this author is going to be one of my best keywords. And sometimes that was just not the case because we needed some data.
Yeah. What kind of tools do you? I know I talked with Dave Chess, and there's Publisher Rocket. What kind of tools do you guys use to help you with your keyword research?
We're big fans of the scraper programs like Instant Data Scraper and the Kindle Trends Also Bots Downloader. Publisher Rocket, I've talked with Dave and Dave's team. They're doing some work to get the Amazon ad keyword tool on there more refined. It kind of pulls in a few too many popular books that aren't necessarily always a good fit. So they're working on that. I think in like a couple months, probably that's going to end up being my top recommendation. It's still really, really solid. There's nothing better when it comes to researching the 7KDP keywords and looking at the competition analyzer in that program, which a lot of people forget about. That's actually the most important thing for those. But when it comes to the Amazon keywords, we usually just try to scrape whatever scrape program works that month from on Amazon. Amazon's always changing their APIs so that it's more and more difficult
Yeah,
to do.
yeah. Speaking of change, that was another question I wanted to ask. Like, how have you seen Amazon ads evolve in your time publishing and using Amazon ads, and what direction do you think they're going to be going?
Well, it's interesting. Organic traffic that comes from other sources like TikTok, like YouTube, whatever, it really impacts the Amazon ads. When they've had big Kindle promotions through TikTok, like free book promos, you will see like an avalanche of ad traffic. Um, and so it's become more and more important to use things like portfolios where you can set a budget. I want these ads to stop after $50 because we had some people spending hundreds of dollars on bad traffic because of these kinds of promos. Secondly, negative targeting. If you're selling a book and you never intend to make it free, you could go into the negative targeting on all of your campaigns right off the bat and exact negative target free Kindle books, free anything, so that you can avoid some of that traffic. Those aren't perfect. Like you'll still have some people who search those terms who find it, but you'll lessen the impact. And because those promos, we don't know. I mean, Gen Z is freaking like
Book
crazy
talk.
with these. I know. And so you don't always know when a big promo is going to happen. So it's really helpful to have that negative targeting in place. This year, it was so rare that we would have spikes. I would call it a Spider-Man problem. I had my superhero books. The first time that Spider-Man Homecoming, when that movie came out, I had this giant spike of like 200 clicks in a week and no one bought. And I'm like, what's happening? It's like Spider-Man. And so, you occasionally get spikes like that, but now the spikes just come and you don't even expect them. And so it's helpful to have that negative targeting in place.
Yeah, I was going to say it would help to kind of be on top of the pop culture and what's going on, but
Yeah.
because there's so much social media book talk and all that stuff going on that we don't see, that's
Right.
leading to that, because it's just internet and social media has become so widespread that it's probably hard to keep track of that.
Yeah. No,
But
absolutely.
if you do have a superhero related book that has a Spider-Man type character and Spider-Man's coming out, you might want to check your
Yeah.
Amazon ads.
I agree.
uh, well, I said we're going to keep this to 30 minutes. And So I want to finish up with a couple of kind of quick questions, a
Sure.
lightning round, if you will. So if you could just finish this sentence with 1 or 2 words, 3 words, as short as possible. So the first one is, the most important lesson I've learned about Amazon ads is.
To be patient with your results.
Agree on the page. I struggle with it.
Me
When
too.
I first started running Amazon ads, I wish I had known.
That only a couple of my books would be profitable in the end.
Interesting. One ad strategy that significantly increased my book sales is.
Negative targeting books that weren't related.
If I could change one thing about Amazon ads, it would be.
To have the royalties reporting on the ad dashboard.
I agree with that one. I concur. And then in 10 years, I see the world of self-publishing.
I wanted to say as a Mad Max dystopian wasteland. No,
You never know. You never know.
right. I know. As a place where authors continue to come together to help each other.
Yeah, I definitely see self-publishing growing in that direction, and just, I mean, becoming so much. It's already easy to self-publish a book now.
Right.
It's just going to get easier and take away some of that market space from the big publishing companies,
Right.
which is
Absolutely.
it's good for us. So
Yes.
awesome. Thank you so much, Bryan. Where can people find you? I know you have your ads challenge. I don't know if that's going on right now. What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, well, bestpageforward.net is where we share some of our products, services, courses that we have going on. You can always listen to my weekly podcast, The Sell More Book Show. It's all the podcast places it's there, but it's also at sellmorebookshow.com. But come to one of my webinars, come reach out. We're always doing free classes. We're always looking to educate, and so come and find us, and we'll try to give you some good pieces of information. We're big on, even if we're ever selling something, we try to always give good information away for free as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll drop your links in the description of this video so you can go and check out everything Bryan has going on. But thank you so much, Bryan. It's been awesome, and I know there's so much more that we could chat about, but let's cut it off here and have a wonderful day.
Sounds good, Brett. Thank you for having me.